Welcome back, class. This is semester number 2, lesson number 3. Our aim today is how did immigration affect America in the late 1800s, which is the 19th century, and the early 1900s, which is the 20th century. I want us to focus on really how immigration, played a part in how the culture of America was shaped and how some people viewed immigration. And this is really building off yesterday's lesson, which focused on the ideas of nativists and why these people came to this country. American society adjusts to industrialization and immigration. And really, when we talk about this, this I think is a perfect picture. And I want you really to look at this deeply, and I want you to notice everything about this. Maybe break up the picture into 4 quadrants. That's something that's a good technique for the regions. Break it up into 4 different quadrants and look at them individually. And with that in mind, our talking point today, or our first talking point today, will be how does this picture make you feel? What thoughts pop into your head when looking at this picture? All right, this is really going to be left up to you guys to talk about. There's no, way to go. There's no way I want you to go with it. I want you to tell me what you see here and how this makes you think and how this makes you feel about immigration during this time period. Melting pot theory. When we talk about America, there's really 2 theories in terms of the way in which America developed with immigration. There's the melting pot theory and the salad bowl theory. And the melting pot theory is very much the more well-known theory. And it's the theory that people from various cultures met in the United States to form a new American culture. And if you look at the picture on the right, you have a pot of, I guess, soup or stew, or whatever you want to call it. And you have Chinese, Irish, Italian, Mexican, Russian. What I want you guys to think about here is this the American culture? All of these things combined. Does this all define the American culture? We had a discussion on this on Friday, and we're going to talk more about it today. Another word that goes along with this is assimilation. And assimilation is the idea that immigrants gave up older languages and customs and became Americanized. And for some people, it was rather easy. They came here, they wanted a new start, and the simplest way to do that was to get rid of everything from their old country. But for many immigrants coming here, that was not the desire. They wanted to come to America and continue to have their culture from home. So some of them did not really want to assimilate, while others did. And the idea of pluralism is the theory that groups do not lose their distinctive features, but live side by side, contributing in different ways to society. And I want you to think of examples of this. All right, maybe the Lower East Side in New York City, where you have the Chinatowns, and you have, the Little Italies. And if you want to connect this back to the book you're reading, well, many of you are reading in Miss Adelson's class, How the Other Half Lives, remember Chinatown. It became more American, right? But the community held on to many of its old ways, and it still does today. So there are parts of it that have quote-unquote Americanized. However, there are parts of it that have continued their old ways from China. And with that being said, I want to look at this picture from Chinatown in New York City. All right. And I really do love this picture. And you guys know that I do love McDonald's. This is a picture of McDonald's in Chinatown. What does this restaurant say about Chinatown? I know it's hard to call McDonald's a restaurant for some of you, but what does it say about Chinatown? What does it say about its people and their way of life in America? And I want you to explain using examples and content-specific vocabulary. So use words like assimilation, melting pot, pluralism. Because McDonald's being in Chinatown shows a really, obvious sign that the Chinese have in some ways adapted to the American culture. But in some ways they've kept their culture. As we talked about on Friday, nativists, all right, they were a group that really did not want America to be infiltrated with all of these immigrants. And when we talk about the nativists, they were not Native Americans. They were 4th, 5th, 6th generation Americans who, if they really traced their roots back, would be tracing their roots back to Europe or to Asia. However, they did not want immigrants coming into this country. And they were able to convince the federal government to limit immigration. And these are very important terms. These come up on every single regions. So I want to make sure you guys understand these. The first one is the Chinese Exclusion Act. All right, the Chinese Exclusion Act banned Chinese immigration for 10 years. It allowed no Chinese people to enter the country for 10 years, and then they actually extended that. The Gentleman's Agreement is basically the same concept, all right, except the Gentleman's Agreement deals with Japan instead of China. The agreement between U.S. and Japan, which restricted any further immigration to America from Japan. And the final one is the National Origins Act or Quota Act. When we're talking about the word origin is where someone or something comes from. All right. And when we talk about the National Origins Act or Quota Act, this limited the amount of people allowed into the United States from each country. For example, in the year 1895, I'm just throwing out a random year here, maybe they were going to allow 300,000 Italians to come in, 250,000 Russians, and 125,000 Polish people. All right, they set quotas. Quotas are an amount to reach and not exceed. All right, so the word quota is very important. Think about quota as something that has to be fulfilled but not exceeded. All right, so every year they only allow the number that they decided at the beginning of the year, and that was it. So with that in mind, 2 questions for us to think about today. Why were the Chinese the first target of immigration restrictions in the United States? And I want you to use examples not only from what we've learned, but also from how the other half lives, which, paints the Chinese in a very interesting light. And the second one, how do policies such as the Chinese Exclusion Act show the hypocrisy of America? And when we're talking about the word hypocrisy, all right, think about hypocrite. How was America being hypocritical? How were they saying one thing and doing another? Maybe connect this to the poem we saw by Emma Lazarus, right? The New Colossus. We're going to allow everybody in. And is this true? For Monday, when we are going to talk about this, excuse me, I want you guys to also have a question developed on this topic. That will be part of your grade. All right? So please have a question developed so that we can have a good talking points. Our check for understanding today. Which action by the federal government during the late 1800s is an example of nativism? A, the passage of the Chinese Exclusion Act. B, the creation of tribal reservations in the East. C, grants of financial aid to Western farmers. Or D, support for the construction of transcontinental railroads. It's very important that we understand the word nativism, or this would be a problem that you would most likely get wrong because the root word might lead you to something else. All right? So make sure you understand what nativism is and the concept of nativism. Our in-class assignment today is going to be to read and annotate the Chinese Exclusion Treaty of 1880 and 1882. All right? There are going to be words and phrases you do not know. I want you to be an active reader. Read and annotate. All right? Circle, underline. You guys know the deal. All right? Questions around words you don't know. And in your notebook, I want you to answer the following. What is the importance of this document or these documents? And using evidence from the text, what restrictions were put on the Chinese immigrants? So if you guys want to think about this, I want you to use evidence from the text, meaning you can't just tell me, well, here's what happened. I want you to use specific evidence from the text, and we need to get more into doing that. All right? And that will be where we end off today.